I found out my childhood home had been sold from a Facebook post, a real estate agent congratulating the new owners on their move-in day. My parents hadn't mentioned a word of it to me, not the listing, not the offer, not the closing date. When I finally asked why, my mother said something I'll never forget. "We didn't think it would matter to you anymore." It mattered more than she knew, because that house wasn't just where I grew up. It was collateral on a promise my parents had made to me years earlier, one they'd apparently decided I didn't need to be told they were breaking. My name is Farheen, and this is the story of the year I learned exactly how much of my family's stability had quietly been built on my patience. I'm 33. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house that my parents, Idris and Samina, bought when I was 6. My younger brother, Zohaib, is 28, and for most of our lives, he's been the one everyone worried about. Not because he needed extra help exactly, but because he always seemed to find himself in situations that required it. 3 years ago, Zohaib decided to start a small logistics company. My parents were thrilled. Finally, they said he was doing something ambitious. I supported it too, in the way you support a sibling's dream, even when you have quiet doubts about the business plan. What none of us said out loud back then was that the business needed serious capital to get off the ground, more than my parents had liquid, and more than Zohaib could secure through a loan on his own credit alone. Here's the part of the story that matters. 8 years ago, before any of this business talk started, my parents sat me down and told me something important. The house was, in their words, eventually meant to be split evenly between Zohaib and me, whether through sale proceeds or inheritance. They said it explicitly, more than once, usually when reassuring me that supporting Zohaib through his repeated ups and downs over the years wasn't unfair to me, because in the end, we'd both benefit equally from what they'd built. I believed them. I never asked for anything in writing, because that's not how our family operated. We didn't do contracts. We did trust. Over the years, I quietly helped in other ways too, covering a portion of my parents' medical expenses after my father's heart surgery, contributing to home repairs, and once co-signing a modest loan for my mother's small side business. None of it was framed as a loan. It was just what you did for family. About a year ago, conversations about the house started disappearing. My parents mentioned Zohaib's business needing a bit more investment to really take off, and shortly after, they stopped bringing up the house entirely. No update on maintenance, no casual mention of visiting, nothing. I noticed, but I told myself it was nothing. Parents don't always update you on every detail of their finances, and I had no reason to assume anything was actively being decided without me. Then, 3 months ago, I saw the Facebook post, a local real estate page, congratulating a young family on their move into a house I recognized instantly. The blue shutters, the mango tree in the side yard, the exact house I grew up in. I called my mother immediately. She confirmed it, almost casually, as if it were a minor update rather than the erasure of something they'd promised me for 8 years. The proceeds, she explained, had already gone towards securing a major new contract for Zohaib's logistics company, new trucks, new warehouse space, the works. I asked my mother directly why I hadn't been told, let alone consulted. Her answer was the one that stayed with me. "You have your own home now, your own life. We didn't think it would matter to you anymore." I want to be honest about what that moment felt like. It wasn't really about the house itself. I understood logically that it was my parents' property to do with as they chose. What stung was the years of quiet contribution I'd made, believing there was an unspoken partnership between all of us, only to learn that when it came time to make a major decision, I wasn't even considered part of the conversation. I didn't argue with my mother on the phone. I told her I needed some time to think, and I hung up. That night, I went back through years of bank transfers, receipts, and the loan co-signing paperwork I'd quietly accumulated helping my parents over the past decade. I hadn't kept it to use against anyone. I'd kept it out of habit the way I keep records for everything. But looking at it all together for the first time, I understood something clearly. I had been treated as a full financial partner in this family whenever help was needed, and as an outsider, the moment a major decision was actually made. I didn't cut my parents off. I didn't make a scene at a family dinner. What I did was quieter, and I think more honest. I called my mother back a few days later and told her, calmly, that I understood the house was theirs to sell, and I wasn't asking for a share of the proceeds after the fact. But I also told her that going forward, I would no longer be contributing financially to anything involving Zohaib's business, medical costs, or shared family expenses without a clear, written understanding of what that support meant. Because I'd learned, painfully, that unspoken promises only seemed to apply when I was the one being asked to give something up. I removed myself from my mother's small business loan as a co-signer, a process that took a few weeks but went through cleanly. I let my parents know I still loved them, still wanted a relationship with them, but that I needed our family's version of trust to include actually being told things, not just being expected to accept them after the fact. It's been 4 months. My parents were hurt at first by what they saw as me keeping score. Over time, though, my mother admitted something that mattered to me, that she hadn't fully thought through what removing me from decisions while still expecting my support actually looked like from my side. Zohaib's business is doing well, genuinely, and I'm glad for that. I don't resent his success. What I've stopped doing is assuming that quiet, consistent contribution on my part will automatically be remembered when decisions get made without me in the room. My relationship with my parents is steadier now, in an odd way. Less built on assumed goodwill, more built on things actually being said out loud. It's not always comfortable, but it's honest. And honestly, that's worth more to me now than the house ever was. If your family ever made you a promise you believed for years, only to have it quietly disappear, I want to hear how you handled it in the comments. Subscribe for more real, emotional family stories every week. Suggested description copy, they sold it without telling me. My childhood home was sold to fund my brother's business, and I found out from a Facebook post. For 8 years, my parents had promised it would be split evenly between us. When I asked why I wasn't told, my mother said, "We didn't think it would matter to you anymore." This is what happened when I stopped assuming quiet support would ever be remembered. Subscribe for more real, emotional family stories every week. Has your family ever quietly broken a promise you believed in for years? Share your story below.